I remember the headlines like it was yesterday. Two young brothers dressed in expensive suits, sitting stone-faced in a courtroom as the world watched in disbelief. Lyle and Erik Menéndez weren't just accused of murdering their parents. They were accused of executing them in cold blood, right in the heart of their Beverly Hills mansion. On the night of August 20th, 1989, Jose and Mary Kitty Menendez were brutally gunned down while watching TV in their den. The killers used shotguns at close range, leaving behind a gruesome and chaotic crime scene. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a robbery, just two mutilated bodies and a house soaked in silence. The initial theory was that it had to be a mob hit. Jose Menendez was a wealthy entertainment executive with high-level connections, and the brutality seemed professional. The Beverly Hills police launched an intensive investigation, but nothing quite added up. And strangely, the two sons weren't treated as suspects. At least, not at first. Lyle and Erik played the part of devastated sons perfectly. They cried during the funeral. They clutched each other in front of cameras. And then, just weeks later, they started spending their inheritance. Lavishly. Lyle bought a Rolex, a Porsche, and a restaurant. Erik hired a personal tennis coach and traveled extensively. Together, they burned through over $700,000 in a matter of months. This sudden burst of luxury set off alarm bells. The police grew suspicious and began looking into the brothers more seriously. Meanwhile, a psychologist named Dr. Jerome Oziel entered the picture. Erik had started therapy to deal with the emotional weight of the murders. And that's where everything unraveled. During one of their sessions, Erik confessed. He told Dr. Oziel that he and his brother had killed their parents. Terrified, Oziel recorded the confession. But it wasn't long before the brothers found out and threatened the doctor's life. Still, Oziel's mistress, worried for her safety, turned the tape over to the police. It was the break detectives needed. In March 1990, the Menéndez brothers were arrested. The media frenzy was instant. These weren't hardened criminals. They were young, handsome, rich kids from one of America's most exclusive zip codes. The trial that followed would become one of the most publicized in history, broadcast daily to millions of viewers. At trial, the brothers made a shocking claim. They didn't kill out of greed. They killed out of fear. For the first time, they revealed a dark secret. They testified that their father had been sexually and emotionally abusing them for years, and their mother had done nothing to stop it. The murders, they said, were an act of desperation. The courtroom was divided. Some saw them as victims lashing out after a lifetime of torment. Others believed it was just an elaborate cover story to avoid life in prison. The jury was torn, and after months of testimony, both trials ended in hung juries. The Menéndez brothers would have to be tried again. In the second trial, the judge ruled that cameras were no longer allowed, and key parts of the abuse testimony were excluded. This time, the focus was on the brutality of the murders, the money, and the confession tapes. In 1996, both Lyle and Erik were found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought closure to some, but for many, it only deepened the controversy. How could two sons commit such a horrific act against their own parents? And if their abuse claims were true, had the justice system failed to recognize the full complexity of the case? The debate raged on, dividing families, legal experts, and the public. Inside prison, the brothers were separated and sent to different facilities. For years, they weren't allowed to communicate. Despite being incarcerated for life, both attempted to build new lives behind bars. Lyle got married in 1996, and Erik followed in 1999. Their wives, loyal through the years, have remained active advocates for their innocence. As time passed, the case faded from the headlines, until the internet brought it back. In the 2010s, new documentaries, true crime podcasts, and TikToks began revisiting the Menéndez saga. Suddenly, a new generation was discovering the case for the first time, and many began to question whether the brothers had been treated fairly by the justice system. Social media became a platform for re-examining the evidence. Clips of their emotional testimonies went viral. Old interview footage was resurfaced. Thousands of young users expressed sympathy for Lyle and Erik, claiming they were victims, not monsters. The narrative was shifting, and fast. This resurgence in interest caught the attention of Netflix. In 2017, the network released a dramatized series called Law and Order: True Crime, The Menendez Murders, reigniting mainstream curiosity. The series portrayed the brothers' abuse claims in depth, prompting many to reconsider the original narrative fed by the media during the 1990s. By 2023, the Menendez case took another surprising turn. A former member of the boy band Menudo accused Jose Menendez of sexual abuse during his time at RCA Records. This revelation added a disturbing new layer to the allegations the brothers had made decades earlier, and gave their supporters even more reason to believe their story. Calls for a re-examination of the trial grew louder. Some legal experts argued that the brothers deserved a new hearing, especially with the emergence of potentially corroborating evidence. Others maintained that the brutality of the murders and the brothers' calculated behavior couldn't be ignored, no matter what abuse they may have suffered. Today, Lyle and Erik Menéndez remain in prison. But in 2018, after nearly 20 years of separation, they were reunited and now serve time in the same facility. They reportedly see each other regularly, working in prison programs and counseling other inmates. Despite their life sentences, they've continued to fight for justice and tell their side of the story. The Menendez case remains one of the most complex and polarizing in American criminal history. It forces us to ask difficult questions. Can trauma ever justify murder? Did the system prioritize sensationalism over truth? And if we got it wrong the first time, is it too late to make it right? What do you think? Were the Menendez brothers cold-blooded killers? Or broken sons pushed to the edge? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the most controversial and chilling crime stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Crime Chronicles.